Welcome to Her Layered Life, where we talk about family, faith, business, and every relationship in between. Here's the truth: women drive over $80 trillion in global spending every single year, yet only 2% of those dollars go into women owned businesses. What if we took it to 5%? We could change the dynamics of our economy and millions of women's lives. One story, one layer, one woman at a time. Because her life is layered and her influence can change the world. Today's episode is a little more personal. This is a solo episode, and I want to talk about coaching. So one of my layers is coaching. I've been the high school basketball coach for 9 years. And just a little reminder, I played basketball all growing up. I absolutely love it. I think my heaven will be a gym because I really find a lot of joy in a basketball, or like just the atmosphere of a basketball court. I absolutely love it. I graduated from Brigham Young University, and I actually played there on a full ride scholarship at Brigham Young. And I absolutely loved my experience. I loved my high school experience. When I was in sixth grade, actually fifth grade, is when my mom used to teach Sunshine Generation, and that is a singing and dancing class. And she had hundreds of kids in it. But of course, all of the Covington kids were there too. And when I was probably for years, we ran it in this building. And we did the building because we could actually, as a family, we cleaned that building, and that paid for rent. So as a family, we would go and clean the building once a week. That would pay for rent. Sunshine Generation ran out of it rent free. And then mom approached the YMCA. I'm not really sure the details of that. And that was a local community center. And the YMCA brought in Sunshine Generation, actually ran Sunshine Generation as kind of like a co-partnership through the YMCA. I don't know all the details, but that put me and my siblings because the Sunshine Generation ran all after school. So we go to school and then we'd head straight to the YMCA. We spent many nights just playing basketball, playing racquetball, all the little things. And my dad would come to the YMCA after work, and we would head to the gym, and we'd set up the chairs, and we'd set up all the things. And in about fifth grade is when my dad really started to invest a lot of time in training my little sister and I. And at the time, I would have never called it training. I would have just called it dad and daughter time, right? Because that's what you do with your kids, is you spend time with them, helping them to develop skills and talents. And I want to come back to that because I think that it's a fascinating shift in our culture that I've seen just as a coach in the last 9 years. But anyway, so that's when I started really loving playing basketball. And I actually might have been, no, it was fifth because Lindsay was in fourth grade. Lindsay's my little sister right below me. So we started playing. Well, in sixth grade, fast forward a couple years later, that's why I think it was, no, it was seventh grade. Fast forward a couple years later. In seventh grade, we moved to Laramie, Wyoming. So we grew up in Sheridan most of our, from about 4 until 12. We grew up in Sheridan, Wyoming, and then we moved to Laramie because my mom had gone to school at Sheridan College, had gotten her associates, and in order to get her degree in music, which is what she really wanted, we had to move our family to Laramie, Wyoming, with the University of Wyoming there. And so in seventh grade, the end of seventh grade, in the smack middle of the year, actually end of the year, about March, we moved our whole family, and I was in seventh grade, and that was so stinking hard. Probably one of the hardest things that I can remember as a child was moving. But the good news is I was super outgoing, and I love change. I actually thrived in change, even young. So moving seventh grade, junior high, about the worst timing ever. But Laramie High, or Laramie Junior High, and had a fantastic basketball program. And I was able to just plug and play straight into that basketball atmosphere, that basketball team. Those became my truest, bestest friends for the next 6 years as we played basketball all through the summer. It's really fascinating. Utah is the only state, that's not true. I don't know if Utah is the only state. I could figure it out. But Utah is very rare, and there are parts of Utah that actually have junior high programs, but a lot of parts of Utah do not have junior high programs. And that was astonishing to me when I moved here and started having kids, because in Wyoming, we had an ABC team in both seventh and eighth grade, and ninth grade. And we literally had our own season every single year. The buses, 20 games, coaches for every team, you name it, we were doing it in the junior high. And so that was an awesome experience for me to be able to take something new and moving, and the hard that comes with that, especially as a 12-year-old junior high kid, um, that I was able to come into a basketball world that I absolutely love, that I already started to find so much joy and happiness in that world, and then it just was even sweeter when it fit so closely into, or it fits so nicely into that part of life. But anyways, as I think about back on my career as an athlete, I was tiny. Did not even reach 5 foot tall, 5 feet tall. How do you say that? 5 feet tall, 5 feet tall, and 100 pounds until I was a sophomore in high school. I was a tiny little tot, and so really, I had never really even considered playing on in basketball. My best friend Megan, she was like just this incredible basketball player. She was very athletic. She just was what everyone in their brain thinks when you think of a college athlete. She fit that perfectly. But my little tiny tot 5'3" ness, was I talented? Yeah, I was quite good at it. But it wasn't really something that was on my radar until Megan really started talking about wanting to go on and play basketball in college. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder if I could. So fast forward through my high school career, but not too much fast forwarding, because my experiences with my coaches, that's really what I went into, those experiences with my coaches in junior high, and even my experiences with my dad as we started to train and develop even in those really young years. And then my coaches in junior high, my I say club lightly because club means something so significantly different now. But we did spend a lot of time in seventh, eighth, and ninth grade traveling into Denver. So in Laramie is about 2 hours from Denver, and about an hour away from Fort Collins. And that was where a ton of basketball was happening. And that's actually where we would have to go in order to play these out of season tournaments to continue to develop and get better. But even all the coaches through all of that club play, they were incredible human beings and just a force for good in my life. And really, I had been taught from a very young age what being a good, great coach looked like. And so I go through my high school career, have a phenomenal experience there. I end up getting recruited. I choose to go to the College of Southern Idaho which is a NJCAA junior college. I have a really fantastic career there. End up signing to then get recruited to go play on to BYU, and end up having a phenomenal career there as well. Just life altering, life changing, phenomenal opportunities to grow and develop, not only as a person, as an athlete, spiritually, all the things. I can attribute so much to those experiences I had as a college athlete. And I remember for several years I had been asked, fast forward now, I'm coaching Charlie. She's in bantam years, right? She's in the little J Jazz years. So I start coaching her in about fifth grade, and I'm really loving it. I love being back involved. I actually coached for 3 years at Lone Peak right out of high school. I was approached to come and coach, assistant head coach at a varsity coach at Lone Peak for 3 years. So I first dabbled in it a little bit before I had started really, popping out all the kids. But I had 3 years there, which was a phenomenal experience. I got to coach with one of the best. Her name's Shauna Kay. We ended up losing in the state championship to Bountiful. I can still remember on a three in the left-hand corner. Isn't that funny how trauma helps you pace the memories of loss? But then I coached a couple more years with my assistant coach that was at BYU. They did a coaching change, and she decided to come over and coach high school at Lone Peak. And she asked me to stay on as her assistant. So I got a couple more years, and then I started having kids. And it wasn't until about Charlie's fifth grade year that I coached a J Jazz team. And then we went a little bit further and went to Bantam, which is kind of our club, youth club teams. And then it was her freshman year that I saw some things shift in her, and I saw that I really wanted to change how the environment was, and help that. And so I kind of I went in, I talked to the AD, and I just said, "What can I do?" And he's like, "I've been asking you to come coach for a couple years." And I said, "Oh my gosh, there's no way I mean, I have a baby. I have 8 kids. Charlie's my oldest. We're talking she's 14. I have a 1-year-old. It's a lot there, and I'm running a company. How in the world do you want me to fit in being a head basketball coach?" And he's like, "Well, if you want to do this, that's really our option." And so I really thought about it, and he said, "Just apply. Just we're going to open it up. Just apply." So I applied, and on my drive to the school, I'm pulling in. and I'm not even pulling in. I'm actually driving by the high school, and I literally had like this vision. And the Spirit said, Amanda, you have already been shown what it looks like to be a great coach. And I have this, like, I still get chills. I just got chills again. I saw all of the coaches that I'd had throughout my life, and they had all been incredible men and women that had taught me. And the reason why I loved basketball so much is because I had been so blessed to be coached by men and women that cared for me, loved the game, and taught me how not only to be a great basketball player, but how to be a great person too. And so that experience, when I ended up being offered the job, I knew that Heavenly Father really wanted me to be a basketball coach. And I knew that I had been prepped and prepared to do that, and that God had ordered my steps um, to do that. So, anyways, that's kind of a little backstory and how I even got into coaching. It was a very spiritual experience for me. And I think that I needed that experience because it has been, and I tell people this all the time, guys, I have started a company from the ground up, a company that sells crop tops from Odyssey. I mean, I'm telling you, I didn't choose an easy product to sell. I have 8 children. My husband has traveled our entire marriage. I know how to do hard. Like, and I'm actually quite good at it, and I'm happy with it. But when I started coaching, it is the hardest thing, hands down, I have ever done in my entire life. And it's been fascinating the things that I have learned as I have coached young women, a game that I love, but even more importantly, a game of life through a game. And I truly believe athletic sports, especially team sports, and this is what I want to talk about today. Team sports for women are so important. If a young girl can play team sports, we are setting her up to be so successful in life in so many different ways. So I want to talk about that today. That is what I want to discuss is the top 3 reasons I believe girls should participate in team sports, and whether that's anything. Team sports, yes, but sports is really important. If it's individual sports, fantastic. I think that's great too. But there are certain aspects of team sports that I think is essential, not essential, but very, very valuable when we're raising our young daughters. So let's talk about it. Um, the coaching. Let's talk about coaching. I've spent a lot of years around sports, tons of years. I played volleyball, I ran track, I played soccer, softball. I've played a lot of sports. In fact, ironically, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but my major, I graduated as a physical education teacher. That is my major with a minor in coaching. So the fact that I'm running a business with no business experience is actually kind of ironic. But the fact that I, several years later into my mothering lifestyle, that I have been given the blessing to be able to be a coach and use a lot of that a lot of that education that I gained 20 plus years ago is pretty awesome. So I've been around a lot of sports as a player, as a mom, and now as a coach. And if I've ever coached, you know something very quickly. If you've ever coached, first and foremost, you can't play yourself to be a great coach. I don't care if you've played professional basketball. I don't care if you are the best basketball player in the entire world. If you've never coached it, you've got you won't be able to do it very well at first. You have to be able to learn how to coach. Coaching is something very hands-on. It requires experience, it requires patience, and it requires time. And I didn't know that. I just walked into coaching and thought, gosh dang, I have played a lot of basketball. I've played a lot of sports. I played volleyball. In fact, volleyball, we were the state champions. It's the only state championship I've ever won in my entire career was as a senior in volleyball. So I have played a lot of sports. And I just thought that I could walk into this coaching gig and it would just come so naturally. And of course, certain aspects did come naturally. Teaching it, running a practice, teaching skills, fundamentals, that was natural. But the actual coaching, the strategy, the watching the game, the knowing what to do, the making sure the kids are well getting along and developing team activities to help them develop the chemistry, all the things that comes with experience. But um, it's about when it comes to coaching, it's not about the games. And that's what I realized is for me, I love practice. Games make me literally I lose 10 pounds during season because I can't eat because I'm always nervous about how we're going to come out and play. It was about the processes, about coaching and practices and making sure that I'm developing practices that help the kids perform to their best ability. And it really is about helping young women become kind adults, kind, contributing, team working, cheerleading teammates that not only wants to be really, really good because she as an individual wants to be great, but because she knows that when she is great and she is doing her best, she builds everybody else around her up as well. And at the end of the day, that is what matters. That is the most important thing to her, is that not only she is becoming her best, but because she is her own, because she's the teammate with her fellow teammates, they are becoming better because she is becoming her best. Sports teach girls lessons that are almost impossible to replicate anywhere else. All right, lesson number 1, showing up. These are my 3 top reasons why I believe girls should compete in team sports. The first lesson girls learn in sports is how to show up even when they don't want to. It is hard to play sports. It is hard to show up every day. You're showing up when you're sick. You're showing up when you're on your period. You're showing up when you're grumpy because you're about ready to start your period. You're showing up when you have a broken nose and maybe you're wearing a mask or you've got tape on your thumb or a brace on your knee. You're still showing up when you're not feeling 110%. And I don't know about you, but as a mother, that is something that prepared me better for motherhood than anything else it did or would. Because as a mother, we have to show up. It doesn't matter if we don't feel good. It doesn't matter if we just had a baby. It doesn't matter if we have so many things going on. A mom has to show up under very unpredictable and unsatisfiable, whatever that word is, conditions. And that is something that I think is so important for girls to understand. Showing up when they're tired, showing up when they're sore, showing up when they're sick, showing up when they're embarrassed because they just airballed a shot in front of a gym full of people, showing up when their insecurities are screaming at them, showing up when perfectionism tells them they aren't good enough. Sports force girls to move through those feelings instead of being stopped by them. And if, as girls and as women, we especially can move through those embarrassing moments, those perfectionism moments, and battle through those and keep showing up, we can conquer the world. We really can. And that matters because research shows, let me tell you something. Research shows girls who play sports develop higher confidence, stronger self esteem, and lower rates of depression compared to other girls that don't participate in sports and athletics. They learn resilience. They learn that feelings don't have to dictate action. Isn't that good? Feelings do not dictate whether or not you're going to get out and get something done. And that lesson alone will serve them for the rest of their lives. Lesson number 2, competing together. Now, I've said a million times, we need to learn to not compete, but to create, right? But there is an element of competition in sports. Duh, if you're not competitive, it's probably not going to go very well for you. So you have to figure out how to still have a competitive mindset, a competitive desire, but still create an atmosphere of teamwork. And that, my friends, is harder than it sounds. It really, really is. Competition gets a bad reputation sometimes, but healthy competition inside a team environment does something incredible. It teaches girls how to push each other to be better. It teaches them how to celebrate each other. It teaches them how to sit on the bench and cheer for their teammates that just took their spot. That is a life skill because women supporting women, and we know this is the whole purpose of Her Layered Life, right? Because women supporting women is one of our greatest superpowers. Think about that. Women supporting women is one of our greatest superpowers. And there's data to back this up. Studies show that 49% of women leaders say that leadership skills they developed through sports directly help them succeed in their careers. And there's even one more that's even more interesting. Research shows 94% of women in C suite executive positions played sports at some point in their lives. That is a huge statistic. And let's be honest, I spoke yesterday to a bunch of BYU students. It was so fun. I love speaking to students, I love being on college campus. I think it's really, really fascinating. It reminds me of those good old days, right? Where you were just fresh and new and trying to figure out life. But I was speaking to them yesterday And the bottom line is we are all CEOs of our own life. We are all living a life and we have, I mean, we may or may not be, but if we want the best life possible, we should all be sitting in C-suite executive positions of our own lives. And what does that look like? Are we going to show up with more self-confidence? Are we going to show up with higher self-esteem, with less depression, with more motivation, with more kindness, with more ability to cheer ourselves on and the people in our circles on as we are leading out these CEO lives? And whether or not it's a CEO of our life, you're going to be a CEO possibly of a family. You could be literally in a C-suite expectation CEO chair in a big company, or you may be a CEO of a marketing team, a CEO of a church group. There's so many different elements of our lives that when we put ourselves, especially girls, choose to play sports and choose to learn these skills young, it just sets them up for great success later. It's not an accident. Sports teach girls how to lead, how to cooperate. Nope, not cooperate, but it is good. Collaborate, how to collaborate and how to compete without losing respect for each other. And that is so powerful. When we can collaborate, when we can lead, when we can compete, but do it in, like I said in the beginning, in a team like environment, cheering one another on, creating an environment of team over self, that is when we become and step into our superpower as women. Lesson number 3. I am a huge, this is probably something that this is a hill I will die on. Girls need to be seen. Girls need to be cheered for. Girls need to be invested in. There is something powerful about a young girl running onto a court or a field and knowing that people came to watch her, to cheer her on. The rest of her life, for the most part, especially if she chooses to be a mother or wife, right? A wife, a mother, she will be the cheerleader for the rest of her life. That's what we do. We cheerlead for those around us. We are the world's best cheerleaders, right? We cheer our husbands on, we cheer our kids on. But when it comes to being cheered for ourselves, that's very uncomfortable for us. So I really believe in those early days, especially junior high, high school, for girls to have people come and cheer them on, it is powerful. When girls feel supported, they tend to thrive. They tend to know that they matter. Female athletes are more likely to graduate from high school, less likely to engage in risky behaviors, and significantly more likely to succeed in leadership roles later in life because someone believed in them, because someone showed up in them, someone invested in them, and someone came to watch them play. And that is powerful. Every year I feel like I have like this thing that I learned in the season. One season I learned when we were 2 and 22. I can go into that later, but that was the hardest season of my entire career. And this is what I learned. This is going to sound terrible, but I'll explain later. Um, it is way harder to be a loser than it is to be a winner. When you are losing all of the time, finding the motivation every day to step back up and go to practice and keep putting in the time and the effort without the results, oh my goodness, that is hard. And that's what I learned that season. And that season was so magical. It was very, very, very difficult in a lot of ways. But I still remember the end of the very last game. We lost, but we played so hard, and guys, we had great, like, when you really looked at it, the problem that happened with that season was that the year before the girls were really, really good. So the girls were coming out of the last season. We were ranked 12th in 5A, which is really, it's quite good. Anytime you can be the top 10, top 12 teams, you've had a great season. And these younger kids, they had competed against this team all year long, in the year previously. So in my head, I'm like, these kids are ready. So I put together a very, very hard preseason, competitive preseason. And every single game, we were right there. I'm not kidding, right there. It really, every single game came down to about 2 minutes of like a brain fog. And we would just go behind about 8 to 10 points. And every single game, that's about the spread that we would lose by, would be 6 to 8 points. So we were right there the whole time. But what ended up is after preseason, we were 0-10. 0-10. Now we had played some of the best teams in the state, but we had found ourselves on the trajectory of having a losing mentality. The crazy thing is that even after all that, we had 2 wins against Spanish Fork that year. And that final game, we're sitting in the locker room, and the kids are almost like shocked. They're shocked because when you are in a losing trend, you typically feel very heavy, very sad. I mean, there were moments of all of that, right? I can remember after one of our losses, we just had lost just barely. It was a region game, and everyone went home. And I told Tyler, I need some time. And I literally went and grabbed a basketball. I took my shoes off. I had an extra short, put my shorts on, and I just went and ran myself through like a workout I would have done back in the days. And I cried the whole time. I just cried. And I was like, Heavenly Father, you got to help me with these kids. They're working so hard. They deserve to get the results that they're working for. And it maybe happened, I think, the next week, but it was a very hard season. And the kids were just like, Coach, and I felt it too. I said, kids, you know what's so incredible is that even after this season, I do not feel like you kids became losers. You didn't become you didn't allow the losses to change into a losing mindset where you didn't care anymore. There was no effort. You're like, well, if we're not going to win, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to work hard. I'm not going to do these things. That never happened. Every practice they worked hard. Every practice they practiced like winners. And even at the end of the season, it just still had a very positive, um, spirit about it. And it was actually so shocking. And I was so proud of them for that very reason. Anyways, this year, so every year I have like a little thought process. And this year it's been so on my mind is the journey, the process, and the importance of enjoying the process, enjoying the journey. And I'm going to be so bold to say, if you do not enjoy the journey that you are on right now, I'm not saying is it easy. There is a big difference between enjoying something because it's easy or enjoying something because it pushes us, it helps us. You can feel the pushes and the pulls, the trials and the highs and the lows. All those things are helping you become a better person. And in doing so, you actually enjoy the process and the journey. If that is something, if you're on a road and you're on a journey right now that you're not feeling the ebbing and flowing of that joy and enjoyment of the process and the journey, you need to you got to look at it. You need to really kind of take a deep dive into that and decide, am I on the path that I'm supposed to be on? Because the journey is the point. Okay. And this is why. So this season, we had a fantastic season. We did, you know, I was told based on like our RPI, which is the ranking, you get ranked in this state for wins, for losses, for competition. Were they a great competition? Was it a great competitive game? Were they good? Right. So like we played Bingham, who's a 6A team. That's really good for a 4A team to play a 6A team. We ended up losing to them, but that doesn't affect us as much as if we were to lose to like a poor, smaller school that isn't as good. So there's all this ranking system. And so I set up our preseason to be hard so we were prepared for state and all these things. And it was such an incredible season. It was so fun and exciting. And the kids, they really came together and we were playing really great basketball. And we get to the semifinals of state and we lose. And it was so sad because the expectation, guys, is that you win. You don't play sports to lose. You play sports to win, right? Like the final result, that end result, the expectation of that is to be a champion. Whether that's in college, whether that's in high school, whether that's in like club basketball, you go to tournaments, you compete so that you can be and win the tournament, right? So when we didn't win the tournament, because that's the expectation, there is like this sadness. I can't even explain it because I've been doing it my whole life. I've never, other than volleyball, I have not ever won a championship game as a basketball player. So all these seasons have ended in a loss. And what I realized is how important it is that if we don't enjoy the journey and everything is based on the end result, we are going to always be so sad because rarely in life do we actually get what we thought and what we thought the expectation should be. Most of the time, we get something that looks a little bit different. And that is why it is so important that we focus on the journey and the process. This is one of the most beautiful things about sports. The losses hurt, the season ending stings, but eventually you look back and think, that was so fun. That was so hard. That was so worth it. Sports teach young people something incredibly valuable. The process is the point. And honestly, the lesson applies to life, marriage, parenthood, business, faith. If we only love the outcome and not the process, we will spend a lot of our lives feeling disappointed. But if we learn to love the journey, we will find joy almost everywhere we go. If today's conversation resonated with you, please share it. Share it with a parent, share it with a coach, share it with a young girl in your life. Because when girls step onto a court, a field, or a track, they're not just playing a game. They're learning resilience, they're learning confidence, they're learning how to support and lead each other. And those lessons don't stay in the gym. They show up in the boardrooms, the communities, families, friendships. So let's keep showing up for girls. Let's keep cheering them on. And let's keep building the kind of world where girls learn early that their strength, their voice, and their teamwork matter. Her life is layered. And when girls learn to play together, lead together, and rise together, their influence can change the world. Mwah.